If you were a kid during the late 2000s and early to mid 2010s, I'm sure you remember the kind of influx and trend of there being just a ton of monster-themed kids movies at the time, especially on Netflix. You had titles like Monster House, Monsters vs. Aliens, Monster High, Daddy I'm a Zombie, Vampire Dog, Casper's Scare School, Paranorman, Hotel Transylvania, Mummy I'm a Zombie, Spooky Buddies, The Box Trolls, Girl vs. Monster, My Babysitter's a Vampire, Coraline, and of course the Goosebumps movie from 2015. I mean, you also had games like Plants vs. Zombies and a bunch of stuff during this trend as well, but I don't think it was just random, because also during this time you had a bunch of shows on for the adults. You had like The Walking Dead, American Horror Story, Z Nation, iZombie, Zombieland. Okay, yeah, most of these are zombie related, but I think that was just like the main trend. I don't know if I'm just like crazy or what, but I feel like during the late 2000s and early 2010s, they were just spitting out so many decent original IPs for like spooky kids movies, mostly especially those involving already established monsters like zombies, vampires, Frankenstein, mummies, and just monsters in general. I mean, you had some good late 2010s kids spooky movies like Zombies and Hotel Transylvania 2 and Hotel Transylvania 3. I probably just wasn't paying attention to them anymore because Netflix was no longer my main source of entertainment, but I still feel like the late 2000s and early 2010s had like this really cool trend of monster-related media, especially for the kiddos. I remember scrolling on Netflix, whether it be at my grandparents' house or at home on Netflix for the Wii, and yes, for all you kiddos, Netflix used to have a version on the Wii. So did YouTube. It was truly an innovative time. Anyways, I say this while there's probably like a billion streaming services currently available for the Nintendo Switch, but I digress. I started writing this video because I don't think I've heard anyone really talk about the bigger trend of media and otherwise having to do with zombies and vampires, like specifically, probably because of IPs like Twilight and The Walking Dead. But I was trying to think of this one mobile game I played on my tablet as a little kid in like 2013, because kids on tablets aren't exclusive to the 2020s. I'm a real trendsetter, I am. But the mobile game was called something like Zombie Pets or something like that, where it was like zombie puppies and kitties and bunnies and whatnot. And I think it was almost like Whack-A-Mole or something. But I remember being absolutely traumatized by it because they were so cute, but they were zombies, and that made me sad because that meant that they were dead. Or maybe you had to kill them, I don't know. But I was so sad and traumatized, alright? But I was talking to my friend about it, and I talked a bit about how there was just this bigger trend of zombie stuff going around in the late 2000s and early 2010s, even on places like MySpace and whatever else, and I was absolutely obsessed with them at the time. I mean, I had this neon yellow-green shirt that said "Keep calm and beware of zombies," and I used to play zombies with my degenerate-ass ex-step-uncle every day because zombies were genuinely so scary to me, and people killing zombies were genuinely so cool. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. There was like just an influx of monster movies and otherwise basically kids horror movies in the early 2010s that provided kids of that era with the EBGB spooky frights and nightmares. Before the late 2000s and early 2010s, you had other kinds of kids spooky media like the Goosebumps show. You had movies like Little Monsters and Beetlejuice, Nightmare Before Christmas, The Addams Family, Hocus Pocus. This is Editing Juno here, and I was going to mention the Corpse Bride, but I forgot to. But I think that kind of is part of the before 2010s, whatever. So yeah, the Corpse Bride as well. And kind of spooky and weird shows like Invader Zim, Real Monsters, and even Courage the Cowardly Dog. And shows mostly on Nickelodeon in the 90s and early O's. But in recent years, what have we had for kids horror movies? That's right, the one and only Hotel Transylvania 4. That and Zombies 2, 3, and 4, with the 5th Hotel Transylvania and Zombies set to come out in 2027 as of this video. And it isn't an issue that's just never been reported upon. Many people have complained about the lack of original IPs and ideas for kids movies post-pandemic. It's mostly just sequels, remakes, prequels. requels, and people are tired of the same nostalgia-bait slop and the complete lack of original ideas in comparison to the past 30 plus years. But it works. People are still going to watch the movies, and movies are still going to reach record highs at the box office, and new IPs aren't going to be made because they're risky. Why spend money on a new title that could make only $100 million at the box office when you can rehash the same thing again for the 5th time and make almost $1 billion, even if the movie sucks according to non-diehard fans? But when it comes to specifically horror/scary movies made for kids, they seem to have been hit probably the hardest in the kids movie scene. Like, actually, name one original kids spooky movie from the last 5 years. Don't look it up. That's right, you can't, and neither can I. I even looked up any kids horror movie to come out in the 2020s, and I still can't name one. Now name every song ever to prove you're not a poser. I'm sure this trend undoubtedly had to do with the growing alternative community at the time and to the mainstream and their affections towards horror and love for movies like Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice, and the like, with alternative clothing stores like Hot Topic and Spencer's being very popular and catering to that trend at the time. And with the decline of third spaces for teens and preteens, the decline of teens and preteens watching movies, and the increase of ordering your alternative fast fashion from Shein and Temu instead of from Hot Topic, comes a decline in movies aimed to appeal to a young, horror-loving audience. For example, in Daddy, I'm a Zombie and Mummy, I'm a Zombie, the main character Dixie Grimm is portrayed as being more alternative-looking, with her side fringe and striped skin-tight clothing and darker makeup. In Hotel Transylvania, Mavis is depicted with similar alternative tropes, more similar to a goth rather than an emo like Dixie Grimm. This was also prevalent with books, with series such as the Chronicles of Vladimir Todd series by Z. Brewer and the Croak series by Gina D'Amico. You also had darker characters like Raven from Teen Titans becoming popular in the mainstream, and like Shadow the Hedgehog. But it seemed the mainstream just kind of craved this little bit of safe darkness, and that really manifested in the types of movies made for kids and preteens at this time. Of course, all for the profits of big movie. You also had Total Drama Island, which had quite a few alternative characters in it as well. You had characters like Ruby Gloom from Ruby Gloom, Gaz from Invader Zim. I'd say Mandy from The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy if she didn't dress like such a prat. And this is no surprise that kids media would tend to start appealing to the alternative community as the emo, goth, and mall goth communities grew. Well, not so much mall goth, they kind of faded out, but still. Mall goth, my beloved. But overall, alternative people in media and the introduction of alternative subculture in the mainstream, an oxymoron I know, led to movie studios going, maybe we should make some movies for them and make some money. Even though I'm pretty sure, besides from like Hotel Transylvania and Zombies, none of them had any long-term success from this era. And as the amount of emos died down alongside the use of Tumblr, so did the potential incentive of making spookier and darker movies focused towards a younger, horror-loving audience. One that was dwindling as the kids grew up, and the new alternative-bound kids failed to take their place to the same degree. And nowadays, with alternative subcultures becoming more prevalent again, kids these days aren't turning towards Netflix or movie theaters to get their fix. And those who are turning to streaming services oftentimes are just consuming adult media instead of media specifically made for them, like Has-Been Hotel, Hell of a Boss, and other shows like that. Which it could be made a point that kids these days are kind of growing up quicker than we did and consuming media not particularly made for them, but instead made for an older demographic. And with the rise of social media and kids having access to and being on social media so much earlier, it's kind of like they're having to adapt to an adult world so much quicker than we did when we were kids, when we could still play on the game system and go outside and talk to our friends without everything being intrinsically connected to the internet and the bigger world connected to it. So instead of going to movie theaters or watching a Netflix exclusive movie or finding a DVD in those big DVD bins at Walmart for like $4, instead they're doing what so many creepypasta obsessed teens like myself were doing in the 2010s. returning to the internet. From the internet, these communities came into the mainstream, and to the internet, these communities will return and continue to thrive in, away from the ever-greedy hands of artistically numb movie studios. If you have any experiences with any of these movies, or you think I missed a movie or TV show from around this time that you think fits into this trend, let me know in the comments below. This is my first video I've ever made in this format, with my avatar and background being hand-drawn, and the script and voiceover being done by me as well. I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I plan on making more videos in the future and improving my skills in formatting. Anyways, thanks for tuning in to Juno Pixel. Peace.